What's up, guys? Thai Rivera here again. Getting ready to talk to you guys about the big controversy with Bill Maher and the N-word. Here's the thing. I talked about it a little bit yesterday on my Kathy Griffin video, but I thought because the Bill Maher situation has turned into an even bigger deal that I should at least talk about it a little bit on its own. The thing with the Bill Maher situation is every once in a while, or every so often, I should say, we have something like this happen. And when it happens, you'll see a bunch of tweets and stuff, and it'll be people saying stuff like, that's why we need to have an honest talk about race in America. And I've noticed already a lot of this. I also saw one person that works for some sportscasting show saying that he was supposed to be at Bill Maher's show in like July, and now he was canceling. Which I'm going to tell you, as a person that's actually trying to get ahead in my career, that is not something I would do. Just because somebody on a very popular show says something that I don't necessarily agree with, I would not cut my own throat and not show up on their show and possibly have more people hear about me and actually be exposed to my message in order to prove a point to Bill Maher. I know some people feel like that's a matter of principle for them. To me, I feel like get where you're going and then make the points that you want to make, because you can still show up on his show and take advantage of the fact that you'll have access to his audience while staying true to yourself, in my opinion. I don't think that that's impossible to do. But some people do, and that's that man's choice, so whatever with that. But the thing I want to focus on more is when people say that we need to have an honest talk about race in America, an open talk about race in this country. I agree 100% that we need to have an open talk about race in America. I also think we need to have an open talk about LGBT and several other subjects. The problem with that, though, is right now we have a little too many people that are way too sensitive when it comes to that kind of stuff. In my opinion, it would do a lot of people, especially the people that are maybe on the more liberal social justice warrior side, a huge favor. They'd be doing themselves a huge favor if they would just open themselves up to actually being able to listen to what it is other people are saying. And I'm not saying agree. I'm not saying in the end you have to agree. I'm just saying to listen, because the same way you want people to hear you and understand what it is you're saying, you have to understand what it is people are saying too. And you can't keep censoring their words and saying that they're racist or asking them to rephrase it. No, let's hear it exactly the way you mean it. Let's hear exactly what you're saying. It's full thought all the way through without interrupting. And then let's decide where we're at with it, or what the next course of action would be. Because I think a lot more people are a lot more willing to at least somewhat bend or see somebody else's way if they're just afforded that same courtesy in the beginning. If anybody would actually listen to them, then I think they would be more open to listening to other people. The way it works out now, though, and I know that like social justice warrior types will tell me I'm stupid. I know because I've got brown skin, I'll get called an Uncle Tom. Like, these are the kinds of things I know that will happen. But I still feel that it's important to at least listen, even if in the end you don't agree. The thing with me and the N-word is I don't say that word in my act. Have I ever said it in my life? I'm from Arizona. Yes, I have said it in my life. Do I choose to say at this point? No, I don't. I've grown and I've evolved, and that's not me saying anything to make anybody feel good, or if I said it, I would just say I say it. I say everything else, and well, when I say everything else, I mean like anything else I feel, I say. But with the N-word, I found that back when I used to say it, I didn't really have a connection with it. I just said it because people around me would say it, and it wasn't uncommon at that time. You got to remember, I grew up in a time and in a state where people, because I'm from Arizona originally, where people would regularly use racial slurs, and even now people are very open with their racism in a lot of cases in Arizona. And so I just grew up hearing that kind of stuff and seeing people talk like that, and it was like something to try on in a way. It was like, okay, Maybe I'll talk like these friends of mine talk. And then I wasn't raised saying that word. My parents never said it at home, and technically, when I was young, we didn't even curse. So it's kind of weird that I do edgy comedy now, and it's not under any type of rebellion. Like my mother would curse, and my father would curse, but they didn't like live in curse words. It wasn't like always, but they would curse enough, and so I wasn't at all raised in like a religious way, but just as far as us being the kids, we weren't allowed to curse, and especially in front of our parents, because it was considered disrespectful to curse in front of adults. And I still to this day, I mean, like when I do my comedy, I'll do it exactly the way I do it in front of anybody. And I don't care, what the age demographic is in the audience, or if somebody's sitting in the audience with their mother, or that kind of stuff. It's not something I pay attention to. Like as far as I'm concerned, I'm performing for all adults, and I'm going to do whatever it is I do. I'm an adult as well. And so, that's not something I'm really going to act like I care about, because I just don't. But when I'm hanging out at a restaurant or just out in public as a private person, I definitely do watch the way I talk in front of people, especially like family, stuff like that. If it's a lot of people around my age or something like that, then I'll speak freely, and do whatever I want. But even when I meet people's parents now, I still treat them with a certain degree of respect and like what they are. When it comes to the N word specifically, though, getting back to that, I agree that this is the United States. You have freedom of speech, and you can express yourself in whichever way you want to. The thing you have to remember with the N word, though, is you do have the right to say the N word. But the consequence to that is somebody might end up whooping your ass. That's just something that can happen. And I know Bill Maher wasn't worried about that because he's not hanging out with everyday people. He's not accessible to the average person. But one day you're going to say that word in front of the wrong person that's not going to be at all open to it, and you might very well get your ass beat. And maybe you'll be hanging out with people that'll think they're barbaric for doing it, but I know the kind of people I run with will be like, well, I guess you just needed to get your ass whooped because you shouldn't have been saying that word, and you had to know that that could be a possible consequence of that. There was a comic on the scene several years back, a young lady, her name was Kristen. And Kristen, I don't know if she had got it in her head that maybe she thought she was a black girl in her head. I don't know what was going on for her, but she was white, and at some point she just decided to start saying the N word all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean she would say it all the time. And she wouldn't say it in the quote unquote racist way. She would say it in the I'm hanging out, I'm from the streets type of way. But she wasn't from the streets, and she wasn't even a down white girl like that. She was just a white girl from like Seattle or something, and she had decided that it was okay for her to say that word. And several people let her get away with it. I remember like a lot of the comics on the scene, even the black comics, would not necessarily give her a pass or condone it. They'd just be like, okay, well, that's the way she talks, and it's not up to us to correct her. And people let her go. And then one night she had gone to the Saddle Ranch with some other comics, and there was a comic that I can't even remember his name now. I haven't seen him in years though. He was a black comic, and he had come in, to hang out with them and maybe get something to eat. They were all drinking at the Saddle Ranch, and she said the N-word in front of him, and he yelled at her. And again, she's lucky that that's all that happened. But he did yell at her, and he yelled at her like a child. And she tried to say, oh, no, it's cool. My other friends. And he was like, I don't care what your other friends do. And he just really let her have it. In my opinion, rightfully so, and long overdue, because she had gotten away with it for a long time. And she left very embarrassed, and it traumatized her. and she was not on the scene for a while after that. And I think that that's the thing that a lot of people have to remember. It's like I said yesterday with the Kathy Griffin thing. You can't be the aggressor and the victim in the same situation. Like when you said the N word, that was basically you being the aggressor. And then when he yelled at you, you tried to turn into the victim and act like he was wrong for yelling at you when for a lot of us, he was within his rights to yell at you. As I said, I've evolved past saying that word just because one, it didn't feel natural for me, and two, I understand after having so many black friends now. When I was younger, there were a lot fewer black people in my life just because that's the way Arizona is. People sometimes will act like even that's racist, but the circumstances I grew up in were not my fault. I didn't choose to be raised in Arizona. All I know is that everybody talked that same way. There were very few black people, especially in the town that I grew up in Arizona, because I wasn't even in Phoenix. I was in a smaller town. And that's just the way people talk. Like rap wasn't even called rap when I was young. It was called N-word shit. That's what everybody in my town would say. And when people would say the N-word in my town, they didn't look over their shoulder. They didn't wonder if there were any black people around. They didn't care who was around. They just said what they were going to say. And because of the way the times were and the population was, and even unfortunately the way the police were in that kind of situation, like, you know, in the town I grew up in Arizona, if you're a black person and somebody said the N word in front of you and you got offended, that was it. You just got offended because there was nobody that was really going to make a big deal of that. Like, as far as when I was in school, there was a point um, when because Mississippi Burning had just come out, and that had like this was when I was in like middle school, and that had people like, you know, really everything was just racially charged in a lot of ways. And so the few black people we did have were pretty fired up because, you know, I guess maybe being from that generation and the town we were in, they weren't really familiar with everything and the way it went down and didn't have that much exposure to that kind of stuff. So when they saw it, it really was eye opening for them. And it just turned into a bad situation. And I feel like when it comes to that kind of stuff, if we were able to be more honest with each other and not get called names, maybe we could get ahead and get a little bit of understanding just to heal as a country. Now, for me personally, this isn't necessarily the biggest thing in the world because that word doesn't necessarily affect me the way it does other people, but I haven't had the history with it, and my people haven't had the history with it that black people have. So I can't say that I fully understand on a personal first person level. But I definitely do understand just from hearing my friends talk and them telling me the kind of stuff that it brings to mind for them. And just because of the way I am with people and the way that I really will listen to people, because if you know me, you know that I don't mind having a conversation with anybody about anything. And if you want to tell me exactly the way you feel about certain things, I'm a good person to tell that to because one, I am going to listen to you, even if in the end I don't agree. And I mean, I am going to fully listen to you because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking they're listening because they're being quiet while the other person is talking. But while the other person is talking, they're not listening at all. Instead, they're being quiet because they're formulating what they're going to say next. They're trying to figure that out in their head. Me, I don't feel a need to do that. When people talk to me about almost anything, I'm completely cool with just like, okay, let me hear you out all the way, and then I will say whatever I have to say after, if I have to say anything. Because sometimes I don't have anything to say. And it's not because I'm stupid. It's not because nobody went in or nothing went in. It's because I feel like maybe I do need to think about that. Maybe I do need to just sit with that for a little while, which I think is one of the problems with the way things work out, not only in conversation, but especially on social media. You see a lot of people just reacting to everything. Now, if you try to attack me on social media, I might say some sideways shit to you just because I don't always feel like being attacked and I'm human. And sometimes I do get like, well, who the fuck are you? And I think that that's natural, but the older I get and the more I'm around, the more I'm willing to at least listen to people and try to understand what it is they're saying. Even though some of it I don't get, like, I'm still working on trying to listen to white women about what it is they go through, because I think a lot of ethnic people have that same struggle in the way that we don't necessarily understand what the white woman's struggle is exactly. And a lot of stuff they say does seem kind of trivial, like when you're complaining about cat calls and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I don't really care about that. Like, people are dying in the streets, people are getting shot by the cops, shit's getting blown up in other countries, and here there's even like acts of terrorism with like just domestic, and I'm not even talking about what's coming from anywhere else. I really do mean domestic, like that stuff that happened in Portland, Oregon. I mean, like, with that kind of stuff happening, when you're complaining about the fact that somebody thinks you're pretty, or somebody whistles at you or something like that, then I'm not really going for it. When you're talking about certain things that just don't really make sense to me, or complaining about the discrimination within, like, say, the comedy industry, it's like we all have to deal with different discrimination within the comedy industry. And I know that sometimes white men talk about how hard it is for them in the comedy industry, and a lot of people try to get, like, that doesn't exist, or that's not a real thing. Actually, that is a real thing. Just like the stuff that women are saying about, discrimination against females in particular, that also is a real thing. I'm a gay man. I'm Mexican. I look Asian. So I deal with several levels of discrimination within the industry. At the end of the day, I know that I have to work around it, though. So even though I'm open to talking about it, and I will address it occasionally on my podcast, or you'll see it on some of my video blogs at different points, I don't mind talking about it. But at the same time, I feel like it's still up to me to get where I'm going anyway, to not let anything to hold me back. And I know that a lot of times people say, and I've even said it, like, as ethnic people, we do a lot of times have to work harder. Well, that's the same with women in certain cases. Women have to work harder. So am I going to sit and just complain about it? No, I'm going to work harder. And I'm also going to work harder to understand other people, and also find better ways to get my point across and say what it is I'm actually trying to say in the most productive, in regular conversation, the least inflammatory way. Now, when I'm doing stand-up, a lot of people think I do things to be provocative. I don't do things to be provocative. I just say things in the funniest way that I can possibly say them. That may sound provocative to other people, but that's because a lot of times for me, I'll go to like an open mic, which is where I'll try new material out, and I'll say absolutely anything, just kind of verbal diarrhea. I'll just let it come out of myself. So I'll say like the worst stuff in certain cases, and I'll allow myself to say the worst stuff. And then I'll examine why it is I say that, and in a lot of cases, that's where the joke actually comes from. So the joke is somewhere between like the initial inflammatory statement and the actual thinking, and what I've come to realize about myself, or why it is I had that perception in the first place. And then the joke is somewhere in between. So I convey that and recreate that on a nightly basis. And as I even do the joke on a nightly basis, or however many times I'm performing, because sometimes like you'll do a couple shows and you'll be like, I don't even feel like doing that joke. So I don't necessarily think about it that way at those times, but even in my private thoughts, I'll think about it and be like, why is it you say that? And the deeper I go, the more I get an understanding of my own thinking. And also, the more I get better at conveying that point to the other people that maybe feel a similar way or felt a similar way at a certain point. And then from that, a lot of times a real dialogue will start. And if you've ever seen me perform live, or if you ever talk to me, especially if you ever talk to me after one of my shows, you know that I'm very open to people kind of questioning me or asking me. As long as they're polite about it, I'm cool with people, like, asking a couple questions, or trying to delve a little bit deeper into where it is certain things come from, or certain jokes come from, and sometimes just that conversation, I think, will help people grow and will even help me grow. But yeah, so I guess my main point is the Bill Maher situation is what it is, and I know he's apologized and said he didn't have a good night's sleep over it or whatever, which nobody cares how you sleep, Bill Maher. Um, Again, you said something stupid, and that was you trying to be funny, and maybe you thought you were down because you've dated some black women, and cool, then that's what it is for you. But that's not the way other people felt about it, and now you're the victim in that way that you didn't sleep well. See, again, aggressor turning into the victim. Like, first said the word, so yeah, you're the one that kind of started it, and then you got a backlash on social media. Then HBO, I'm sure, came down on you on some level, which I'm sure you like making that check. So they told you to apologize probably, and then you decided, you know what, I didn't sleep the best on that. Well, now you're the victim because you didn't sleep well. Now we made you feel bad. Twitter made you feel bad, which I know certain people are going to have problems with certain parts of this blog post if they, or vlog post if they listen to it, but it is what it is, and I'm just being honest with you guys. That's the way I feel about it. So when it comes to the N-word, I would just kind of leave it out of my mouth if I were anybody. Other than, I never tell black people how to conduct themselves when it comes to that word, and I don't really feel like that's my place because I'm gay and I say the other F word. And I feel like that's my right, and it's been a part of my path and a part of my journey, and I'm not going to have any outsider tell me why I shouldn't say it. I'm not even going to have, I mean, like I said, I'll listen to other gay people if they want to tell me how it is they feel about it. I'll let you share with me, but I'm not going to have you tell me how I'm supposed to feel about it. I'm just going to listen to you, be like, okay, that's a way to think about it, and I will hear you out, and maybe I will mull it over a little bit, and maybe one day my mind will change, but right now, this is where I'm at in my process, and I guess Bill Maher was really just an excuse for me to talk to you guys about other stuff that I thought is important or think is important. And also for me to figure out that I probably would want to put a little more volume in the back of this hair, like right there next time. And then I could also do something to get this down a bit more. Maybe bring the bangs over right here a little bit. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, you guys, I'm Thai Rivera, and I appreciate you guys listening. Please like my video and subscribe. Thanks a lot.